Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another conversation for the AdvaTech podcast. Some of you may know, my name is Arman Arumchi, and I'm the president and co-founder of AdvaTech. Today, I'm joined by Professor Zachary Russell, who is a professor of innovation at Seneca College and our business advisor and part of our team at AdvaTech. And we are joined by our very special guest, Dr. Sedigeh Mahdavi, who is the technology scale-up advisor at Innovate Calgary. So first of all, guys, thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to see both of you, and I know everybody is busy, so it's nice of you to take the time out of your day to come and join us for this. So Dr. Sedigeh, I think the best way to get into this is to hear a little bit about yourself, hear a little bit about your professional background, and then we can move into a little bit of the current day and what it is that you do and all of the beautiful details around that. So please.
Hi, Arman. Hi, Zach. Thank you very much for the opportunity. A little bit on my background. I'm a technology scale-up advisor, as you mentioned, in Innovate Calgary. I joined Innovate Calgary almost 2 years ago. My background is PhD in process engineering, master in reservoir engineering, and bachelor in chemical engineering. I have been involved mostly in research and development in the lab related to oil and gas industry. And in my current capacity, I help startups in Cleantech.
Okay, fantastic. So yeah, today really we're going to gear the conversation around the concept of scaling up. As we all work deeply with startups and founders and people in innovation, I think there's some different perspectives we can get here, and your role at Innovate Calgary certainly provides a lot of unique knowledge that not everybody has access to. So we'll touch upon Innovate Calgary. We will have some discussions around overall concepts of being a founder and the challenges in startups, and move into some more maybe detailed questions about some of the industries you have expertise in. So to start, I would love to know what it is that made you pursue a career in energy and chemical engineering and all of these things. What is it that sort of drove you to go into this field and continue working in this field?
Thanks for the question. It goes back to the time when I was a child. I was born in south of Iran, a field of oil and gas, and every reservoir is there. So I used to see the flames or flares and the operations around. Honestly, my interest comes from that point until I started university, and then I found, okay, chemical engineering could be a good choice to make me continue my interest in this way. And after that, I found reservoir engineering. It's even closer to what I used to see, or knowing something about underground, which we don't know actually, but we want to know. And this is another interest I found. It's a combination of knowledge and also practice. It's not absolute science, even though I'm interested in physics and chemistry as well. But in reservoir engineering, you use all those knowledge in terms of practice and practical point of view. And then I found as I was continuing my graduation, my graduating study, I found that research and development, being involved in that area in my PhD and also my postdoc, it was very interesting to use those knowledge in projects coming from industry. So that was something motivating me all the way up to now.
How have you seen, like over the time you've been in the industry for quite a while now, how have you seen the industry change, let's say from a social or technological perspective? Where have you seen the biggest changes from when you started to today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I started my career almost, let's say, 15 years ago, I've seen that initially industry was way more interested in research and development, maybe just based on the need and the population growth. We needed new technologies. But nowadays, I see the interest of industry, I would say mostly oil and gas industry, is more into how to use it rather than adding new technology. Is still interested in innovation, but very niche innovation we need to improve what we have discovered in the past. So I'd say a little bit change in, as you see, lots of R&D sectors in bigger companies, they narrow down their activities, and they are mostly producing based on the technologies they had. However, they have noticed that based on other requirements as reducing CO2 emission, reducing methane emission, having a better quality of life for everyone. So we need to improve what we have.
Right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know, one of the companies that we've worked closely with is a company that is working towards exactly that, which is reducing CO2 emissions. So with you know, ESG becoming a more and more important factor in business, and the concept of sustainability reporting, which, you know, in some areas now is becoming something where it's no longer just a set of guidelines, but throughout the world, there are actual frameworks coming in place that talk about the auditability of the improvements that you're making, the reductions in CO2 that you have. So clearly, there's a lot of pressure from many different angles on the oil and gas industry. So one of the companies we work with, Western Plasma, they focus on the refining process and the process of desulfurization, removing sulfur from oil, and finding ways to make that process you know, less harmful to the environment and reducing the amount of CO2 emissions that come in. Regardless, there is a push also away from oil and gas, going towards you know, clean tech solutions that are in solar, in wind. How do you see that transition going, and what do you think that conversation looks like? Because I think there are two schools of thought. One of them is to replace as quickly as possible, and the other is to improve, like you said, what we currently have and make that transition more feasible. How do you see it going? What do you think the timelines look like, and what do you think is the best way to sort of have that conversation?
The fact is we are now living an oil and gas industry. So if we want to just stop and transition to another type of energy provider technology, it may not be possible considering the consumption behavior that we have developed in ourselves. If we change our consumption behavior, the way we look at our life, may be possible absolute change, but I would say transition should happen very gradually, because we are human beings. We got used to the level of comfort we have in life, and it may not be possible completely disregard oil and gas, which we have used so far. But we have to definitely think how to use it better. We have produced lots of waste in different matters. Plastics, they are the product of oil and gas industry. We have polluted lots of lands. So we should definitely think how to produce less waste, improve our consumption behavior.
How do you see, like, what's the discrepancy with the amount of energy that we need, and we see that it's growing, especially with the introduction of AI and how much it's being used and how much power it relies on. How much is the discrepancy away from being able to, let's say, completely leave oil and gas? Is there ever a reality where that's a possibility? And should it be, or should it not be?
I would say it's impossible to completely get away from oil and gas industry. Just let's look at it this way. So let's say we want to rely on hydrogen as a source of energy, batteries as a source of energy. All of those, they are not all clean technologies. Batteries are, we need mining to produce those rare metals like lithium, vanadium. So they also
Cobalt,
have
right.
cobalt, that's right. So we do still need to make some waste and produce some pollution yeah. So everything in a mass, I believe, will produce waste anyway. Efficiency in this world is not 100%.
Right.
So
And
yeah.
what about, like, one of the things I think about often is, like, we kind of have a bit of an understanding of the impacts that oil and gas has on our environment and on the ecosystem, let's say long-term or short-term. Whereas when we talk about things like hydrogen energy, or we talk about like batteries and stuff and the mining of all of these minerals like cobalt at the bottom of the ocean, we don't really have the best understanding of the long-term ecosystem impacts, do we, really?
Yeah, that's right. I'm just going to give a very simple example. All these laptops and electronics we are using, what happens to their waste recovery?
Right.
They do have rare metals in them. So in order to recover those, we should use some acids and recover those. That's the waste. I mean, my question is, if we can rely, let's say just one simple example, if we can rely on having a life without these digitals, then we can
Yeah.
also leave oil and gas industry.
That's a really interesting point, because no one wants to give up, no one want to give up, you know, their computers, their phones, accessibility to one another. So they're kind of tied to each other moving forward, aren't they?
Yeah.
Now, as someone who came from Iran, and like taking a look at Iran and Canada, these are two powerhouses in the global energy industry, right? I was curious if you could tell me some of the main differences you see in how Canada and Iran and other countries sort of approach energy and how the oil and gas industry functions. If there's anything in there that is specific or even more general about the sort of differences in how these things are approached.
I would say both of the countries, they have something in common, huge resources in terms of crude oils. But definitely they have different type of oils. Canada has mostly the type of heavy and bitumen kind of oil, and Iran is medium to light oils. So which they definitely have different technologies to drill and to explore and to recover. That's the main difference. But what I like is that the knowledge, my knowledge coming from my undergrad, my bachelor, and then working for almost 4 years in oil and gas industry back home, really prepared myself to use that knowledge and kind of updating that based on the type of reservoirs exist here, based on the type of energy production approaches in Canada. So I wouldn't say they are much different in terms of how to use the energy, but how to let's say discover it, how to explore it, how to make different type
Extract
of
it.
exactly extract
Yeah.
it, how to make different type of use. Then again, it's a matter of different factors: population, geography, and emission targets.
Yes, yeah. As we touched upon before, you know, one of those main differences is the oil itself, the crude oil itself, right? So you have a very high sulfur content oil in that region of the world, in the Middle East and North Africa, 20,000 ppm, as opposed to what you have here, which is much lighter, 1 to 5,000. So the technology actually needs to differ as well in terms of how you refine the oil, and that also has a major impact on the emissions that come out of that process. Now, as far as the Canadian oil and gas industry, if you look at one of the new refineries that's come into place, West Sturgeon, which has faced massive losses over the last few years to the point where the government needed to step in. Obviously, there are very fine margins in the oil and gas industry, right? Which is where I see a lot of resistance coming into new technologies and innovations, is that concern of how do we maintain these margins and not lose any sort of productivity. As far as the innovations that come in, do you see a lot of those innovations coming from startups, founders, research and development in universities? Or do you think more of that will come from large existing multinational corporations that will continue to develop their technology? Where do you see a lot of that innovation coming from? Or is it a combination of both?
Yeah, I would say it's a combination of both of them, because the university always tries to develop research based on a challenge and issue that exists in the industry. So if industry is willing or prefers to overcome the challenges and have a better type of, let's say, efficiency over long term or even over short term, depends on the company's targets. So university, actually, it's a very good platform to help industry. That's something that I see maybe a bit more of connection and being updated with each other would really help these startups. People are really trying to tackle the challenges coming from industry, issues, problems, something that doesn't work perfectly in the operation. But the thing is, researchers and university, they have a different vision when they are investigating a technology or a project, a research topic. Again, we call it research topic. We don't call it technology or project. So they do have, the industry and university, they have different visions from something in common. So if we can bring them to each other, and let's say they get aware of how they look at the problem and the issue, I would say way faster development of those startups will happen, and they struggle less. And also the other aspect is they have to trust each other. Specifically, industry has to trust researchers. And that trust comes from the point that they really understand what's happening on either sides. When something is very known for us, we do trust. But when something is unknown, we may not trust.
How does a company get to the point of feeling like they can trust the information? Like what needs to happen, do you think, for them to be trusted?
Yeah, I would say trust in terms of information and capabilities, and trust that we have the same vision. Sometimes,
Same vision.
yeah, exactly, same vision. So university may do research to, I mean, research is fun. You can
To you.
yeah, you can stay hours and hours in the lab to just find out why this little fluctuation is happening.
Right.
But for the industry, that little fluctuation may not be a matter. That over the long term, the whole behavior matters, actually. So I would say feeling that gap, and maybe more like I don't know, maybe an organization or some kind of activities that bring researchers and bring industry experts, seniors, and make sure they are using each other's knowledge, that would really help the progression.
Very cool.
Beautiful. Now, now that we've spoken a little bit about the industry, now I'd love to speak a little bit about Innovate Calgary. So if you would be able to give us sort of a high-level overview of Innovate Calgary and what it is that they do, and how they're involved in the startup ecosystem in Alberta and Canada. And then we can move into a little bit about your role as the technology scale-up advisor.
Sure, Arman. Innovate Calgary, as you may know, is a subsidiary of University of Calgary. Initially, Innovate Calgary was established to protect the right of researchers in terms of intellectual property, patenting, copyright. But later, they started also helping startups and technologies coming from university, as over time, the university activities changes from research to also more like a practical startups, let's say. Innovate Calgary has 4 hubs in order to help different sectors in the university: Life Science Innovation Hub, LSIH, Social Innovation Hub, Aerospace, which recently opened, yeah, and then ETC, Energy Transition Center, which I'm working in.
Very cool. So
And,
yeah, can you tell us a bit more about your role as the scale-up advisor? What does that entail? Like, what are the common conversations you're having? What do you primarily focus on?
As you know, I work in the Cleantech, so I help startups that they are offering an improvement in Cleantech. Could be related to improvement in subsurface recovery, converting hydrogen or different type of source of energy, battery or sensors. I may not know the details of each technology, let's say what type of catalyst or what type of sensors exactly they need, but I overall understand okay, if they want to develop this technology, what are the dependent variables they have to consider? What are the independent variables, which may look more influensive over the long term in a bigger scale when they want to make a pilot or, let's say, field scale? So I look at their technology in that way. Of course, I get help from seniors in my work and experts from industry. And at the same time, since I'm coming from university, I know researchers in that area. So I try to introduce these startups to them in any certain matters that they need help, and try to make that connection happens. In my job as a technology scale-up advisor, I very strongly work with AdvaTech Innovations, which is also an organization working in Cleantech, helping startups and providing that platform for the startups to grow.
Are there any
And
like unexpected solutions or any innovations that you can tell us about that you're excited about at all? Or is that how it'll have to stay behind closed doors?
Of course, my excitement comes from my background. So
Right.
whatever technology is related to subsurface, I definitely get very involved personally and would like to understand. But yes, as you know, startups they are putting lots of efforts in development and their progress. So I should be also thinking that this is their property.
Right.
At what stage do you typically work with startups, or is it sort of agnostic to what stage they're at? Do you work with startups that are simply in the concept phase and help them, like you mentioned, with just getting to that pilot phase? And do you also help startups that are maybe further along, that they've done their pilot testing and now they are really looking at getting into commercialization? Where is it that you yourself come into play?
No, I do help mostly in the earliest stage of startups, into the concept validation. That's a bigger step because as soon as you get your validation done and you know your technology is going to work, or to what extent is going to work, then the main step, the next step would be looking for fundings and grants, and yeah, trying to, let's say, go to the market and say, hey, I'm here, let's sit and talk, I need your money.
Mm-hmm. And
Is
obviously,
there-
there's a substantial amount of funding, non-dilutive funding available from places like ERA, right? Emissions Reductions Alberta.
Yeah.
Do you find that almost all startups in clean tech, that is one of the main focuses they should have in the beginning, is going after that non-dilutive funding and having that as a resource, given so much of it is available?
It has two sides. I wouldn't say, because when you talk to some of the startups and you say, what's your main challenge? They immediately say, oh, money, funding, grants. And when you ask the next question, so money to do what? So it's kind of, let's say, they have to actually think, if I have $100,000 at this point, 500, what I'm going to do with this money? Yeah, so having a bigger plan,
Like an implementation plan.
and a stepwise plan, that really defines how much grant you need at each step, and you may not need lots of grants actually, but at the same time, bigger fundings, it's I know ERA is targeting certain TRL level, total readiness level, but I want to say money, if you are willing to invest in your technology and putting some money from your own pocket, that's a very encouraging point when you sit in front of investors and or applying for those fundings and say, oh, I'm uh, dedicating this much money and I want this much money from you. Actually, that's, from my opinion, it brings kind of trust to the table, and you may be more successful.
So just to back up for a second here, because I'm always interested if people are listening in and maybe they have a passion they haven't pursued yet. What would someone need to come to Innovate Calgary with to begin the process of potentially working with you as their startup advisor? Do they need to come with founded research? Do they need to come with finances? How can someone come to Innovate Calgary and get the process started for themselves?
In terms of getting advice and help, we do have expert advisor program, so they can get, if at any stage and the stage of their development they can get help with. We have different experts in the business side, in the marketing side, in the technical side. That's not a problem. But I would say If you are really into the startup, most of the burden is on you. It's you, yeah, it's you. You should know the science. You should know, at least to some degree, you should understand how this technology is going to go, who are the potential uh, customers, how you should approach them. So you should make yourself uncomfortable. If you feel comfortable, if your passion is a startup and you're feeling comfortable, I promise you, you're not at the right place. You
Yeah,
should feel uncomfortable. So
absolutely.
yeah, so that's how. But again, we have different type of helps. They can come and or if they want to get some IP advice, we also have that kind of advice as well.
Is there a common misstep that these startups have during the concept validation phase? Do you see a common misstep startups have, such as they don't involve the customer enough in the beginning to solve a problem that they want, or something like that?
I would say they sometimes they come with a very cool idea, but they don't see the whole perspective. They may have a very niche scientific idea that it's amazing, but when you bring that idea to in terms of dollars, in terms of volume, that becomes very dangerous.
Yeah.
In terms of money and dollar you have to spend or you have to develop it. When you open, let's say, the HYSYS, you can put your reactor, you can put your pump, heat exchanger, everything in a piece of paper or in the screen. But when just look at it, when you want to implement it in a real scale, how much space, how much material, how much considerations in every aspect, hazards, environment, people, safety, everything you need. That's really become, so you have to look at it that way.
Real
Sometimes
macro lens down on it to see. Yeah,
exactly.
I get it.
Yeah, and you have to sometimes really think that this may not be done by you on self, but you yourself only. So you have to look for partners. That's
Right.
some, yeah.
And that's something that, directly into one of the next things I want to ask about is that something that we notice, right? Because we provide advisory services. So at AdvaTech, when we work with founders, one of the biggest indicators for success of the company and the acceleration of their growth are some of the personal qualities of the founder. Obviously, everything is built upon the viability of the technology, the experience of the team behind it, the technical background of the people who are developing and researching. But some of those personal qualities of the founders seem to have a massive effect on the success of the company, those being confidence, coachability. And for somebody like yourself who is an advisor, how important do you think those factors are outside of the technology itself when it comes to the founders of the company?
Mm-hmm. Thanks for touching that point. It's really important, as I have seen over these years and also my own experiences. Coachability, it's very important. This is a fact. You're initiating a startup and you may not know everything. So you need help from others. You have to be very open to the interviews, very open to receive advice, very open to be criticized by seniors. From my opinion, when these startups, founders, co-founders, they sit in front of experts from industry and honestly, they get criticized very harshly. I love that when I see that. I feel it's a privilege to listen to those seniors. And this is also a very strong point that me as a young founder or co-founder, I have never been exposed to the environment that those seniors were over the term of 40, 50 years experience. So for sure, they have seen stuff that I have never seen. Definitely, they have things to say. So so why not, let's say, listen to them and being like open to being criticized, and at the same time, like take it easy with with other co-founders. You're working with others. Everybody has different expertise, so it's a teamwork. It's not an individual work. That's how a startup will success. This is not like a theory only. It comes from what from my observations.
That's a great point. One thing I've always noticed with dealing with startups is the ones that can deal with criticism the best are the ones that survive. What advice would you give to founders on how to better receive criticism and implement it back into their business?
I would say just the startup journey is passing from interviewing lots of people.
Right.
If you're open to sit in front of your camera and keep listening and taking notes and learning, then a startup journey is for you. But if you are shy, if you are you get upset quickly, or you may feeling like I want to give up, this is not for you. A startup journey is not an easy journey, but definitely it's very joyful.
Yeah, you got to check your ego at the door, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Given that you really are focused on scaling up the technology side of things, how important do you think it is that very technical founders and people coming from academia and deeply involved in research and development, how important do you think it is that they incorporate a basic understanding of business as well if they are a founder of a startup? Do you think this is something that is best relegated to another founder who focuses on the business aspect, scaling the company, the commercialization route, the go-to-market strategy? Or do you think this is somewhere where everybody needs to have a basic understanding of how business works and how this industry works and really what it takes outside of the technology itself?
Definitely, all the members, they should have an overall understanding of how this technology is going to work. But again, every person has different strengths. The technical people, they do have a very good technical background and understanding of something, but they may not be a good, let's say, talker. They don't actually, definitely they don't have, most of the time they don't have that expertise or convincing somebody, or even look at it with a bigger scale. So we those startups, I say, coming from university, they do need a business person, market analysis person to help them to like kind of carve their idea in a way that industry can digest.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so that's great to hear about Innovate Calgary. We've personally, had some involvement with them as well. They've always been extremely helpful. It really seems that there's a genuine passion to, helping the startup ecosphere in Alberta grow. And on that note, I'd love to kind of hear your perspective on the startup ecosystem in Calgary and Alberta, which is something that has grown immensely in the past few years. This is an initiative that it seems the government and local organizations are putting a lot of effort towards. And do you see that continuing to grow to a point where Calgary and Alberta are considered a hub for innovation? And obviously for clean tech, yes, but overall as well.
Yes, why not? Calgary, Alberta overall has lots of resources, underground mining, oil and gas. But again, I feel each region has its own potential. If we want to be successful, we have to focus on certain technology for a certain region. Let's say Alberta is very well with the oil and gas industry. So let's make that aspect, that sector, more into innovation or more into better use of those resources. East Canada has other type of resources, North has other type of resources, Center another. So I feel we have to be focused. There are, as you said, there are immense number of startups working, but again, we have to be focused. If we want a short-term results, we have to be focused. Otherwise, it will take forever to develop a technology, as it requires lots of grants. So if you want to spend money on, let's say, 5 type of technology in Alberta, I'm just exampling, it may not be possible in short term.
Yeah, fantastic. And obviously yourself as an advisor and founders themselves, they need to be up to date with developments in their industry, right? So if we talk about clean tech specifically, there is a lot changing, whether it comes to regulations, potential direct and indirect competitors for your business. What is a way that you stay on top of the main changes in the industry, and what are some ways that you recommend, whether it be conferences, direct research, general mentorship, partnerships? What do you think is the best way to be at the forefront of your industry and the forefront of clean tech?
In order to be updated, that's what I mentioned at the beginning. We have to have some kind of organizations or I would say clubs, gatherings, that those seniors from the heart of the industry, they come, and when I hear something from an operational person who is really operating a oil and gas plant somewhere, that really is going to update me. Those information I may never find online in the books. Having a personal mentorship and transferring those knowledge to the next generation, to the younger generation, that really matters, and I feel a gap in that. At the same time, yes, of course, conferences, technical conferences, more general conferences that they have talks as well, like hydrogen conference, carbon capture conference, those are also useful. But again, I feel the involvement from industry and academia is something we have to push on. Yeah.
Well, like, look at either in oil and gas, either in the oil and gas industry or in clean tech, like what do you see as being underserved currently? Or put it another way, what area do you see as a relative blue ocean for potential startups to pursue? What would, if you were to start a clean tech company or an oil and gas firm today to do some sort of innovation, what would you be focusing on?
You mean a certain area?
Yeah, sure.
I don't, yeah, I feel in terms of production, I would go to the oil and gas industry, my own background. So in terms of production, we may be fine. We can produce lots of barrels of oils, but in terms of the technology of how to produce it, we may need a little bit of improvement, just to have a more like a cleaner type of oil coming out of the reservoir. Or if we don't want to do that, when we produce it, then maybe we have to refine it better. That's those type of sectors I would focus.
That's very cool. So even so, there could also maybe be it's underserved with, well, how can we best eliminate the waste in the most appropriate way, or even figure out a way to repackage it and use it again, like we did with plastics.
Yes,
sort of thing. Cool. Very cool.
Now, the sort of general challenges that founders face in any industry is that a lot of industries have, very significant barriers to entry. Some of these barriers of entry can be related to who you are, your background, your gender, your sort of age, all of these things. Do you think that the oil and gas industry in general is getting better at not providing a quality of outcome, but providing a quality of opportunity for those coming in? Or do you still think there's a long way to go in that perspective?
Yeah, oil and gas has been trying to include in the new brains and new minds. Definitely there are innovation centers in oil and gas industry. But again, it's not a small industry. So in order for them to take risks, they have to be sure about something that a startup is offering to them. So bringing that trust, creating that trust again comes from that when myself as a startup is going to talk to oil and gas industry, I have to be sure, I have to create that trust. Okay, this is I'm offering, this is exactly what you need. So going back to the same point, I have to understand what challenges they have and to what extent they are willing to spend money on this technology. Then I start and like carve it and like make my technology pleasant to their need. Yeah, that's what I think. It's not easy to, let's say, okay, let's stop the production from this well, you add my additives, my solvent, my surfactant, and then let's see what happens. It's impossible. So creating that trust and that make sure what you are offering, it's really what they need.
And how important do you think storytelling is in getting that message across? This is something startups speak about a lot. When it comes to clean tech and it comes to oil and gas industry, do you think data is king? Do you think data is really where a lot of that trust is built, or do you think storytelling, plays a part in there as well? Your ability to get this message across, because we've seen this differ between different industries in terms of how much of an impact that has.
Definitely, storytelling is something is a tool. You let them know what you're working on. But again, I want to emphasize on, you have to sit in an individual to individual conversation and really deep into your knowledge. That's how you create trust, to answer their questions. They may have questions that you never thought about. So that doesn't come from general speaking, or like, I would say, not from those pitches. It's in a closed door. You sit, you explain, this is what I have, what do you need, and then keep going on that conversation. And if the startup is questioned, okay, we need you to focus on this part of your technology. We need you to offer another type of catalyst because this is not working for us. So you have to go back, find the answer, and again, approach them with a different offer. This is how I believe this is how something progress. Meetings, yeah, those online meetings, it doesn't work. Sorry, this is my personal opinion, but you have to be in person, sitting in a series of meetings with a target, with different expertise, that they really beat your technology. Then something good may come out.
Fantastic. Dr. Sedigeh, is there anything else that you would like to touch upon in terms of what you do, Innovate Calgary, your experience, or maybe you would just like to tell us that, if you had 30 seconds with a founder or somebody in innovation or an entrepreneur, what is it that you would tell them, above all else? What is the most important factor?
I would say, this is a fact. A startup journey is not easy. Don't be shy. Don't give up. It has lots of fluctuation, but it's always going upward. So don't give up. And there are lots of helps around. It's a matter of you to find them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sedigeh. It's phenomenal speaking with you. Zach, thank you so much for joining. It's always a pleasure to have a conversation with you involved. And Dr. Sedigeh Mahdavi, given all that you do and how busy you are, we genuinely appreciate you taking the time to come and speak with us. I hope that we can continue to have conversations in the future, and perhaps get your experience and your knowledge into as many conversations as possible. And we really look forward to collaborating with you in the future, working together and really helping make the world a better place.
Thanks, Armand. Thanks, Zach. And
Thank
thank you
you so
for the
much.
opportunity. Best of luck to Canadian industry.
Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Thank you so much.
Bye.